Hello, welcome to Tasty Tuesdays. I'm Daryl Minch, Family and Community Health Sciences Educator here for Rutgers Cooperative Extension of Somerset County. Today we're making a wonderfully easy and delicious maple squash bake with cranberries. So let's talk a little bit about winter squashes and other hard rind squashes. It's another name for them. What I have here is probably a carnival squash. It's very similar to acorn squash. And all of these squashes are medium-sized squashes, and they're what we call winter squash. They're usually harvested September to October. They're hard rind, so the rind is generally inedible because it's so hard and very fibrous. They're also chock full of lots of minerals, and they're all in the pumpkin family. So pumpkins, winter squashes, all in that same family, have that same rich texture on the inside. Some other hard squashes might be these little mini pumpkins. They're really cute and they're edible. What I like about the winter squashes is you can use them for decoration for a while, and then you can eat them, so that they have that double benefit during the holidays. Another squash that's in this family is the butternut. All of these squashes are interchangeable in different recipes. The product is very similar. When you're choosing a winter squash or a hard rind squash, you want to pick something that's really hard. It should be like a rock. You don't want soft spots. That's a sign that it's starting to spoil. You want to look for kind of a dull color. It wouldn't be really shiny naturally. Different color variations are normal. You can see this is green. Sometimes they're all green. Sometimes they have areas of yellow. Sometimes the varieties are a little bit, have different colors. They're absolutely beautiful. This one has a nice green bottom as well. They should be heavy in the hand. If they were really light, it's an indication that they've dried out and they're not going to have that nice flesh for you to eat. They should have the stems on it because it really keeps the squash from drying out. The stems should be not green. It should be kind of corky, so that it's sign of the good piece. Now, how long do these keep? These little mini pumpkins, probably a couple of weeks or so. After that, they may start to dry out and the inside's going to be tougher and not as flavorful, but they do keep a couple weeks. The larger squashes like this and the butternut, they'll keep a month, so they keep a long time. That's one of the nice things about these hard rind squashes. Where to store them? Store them in a cool place. You don't want them in a sunny spot. I mean, certainly I've used them for decorations in my home, but I don't want them sitting in the sun either. Once you cut the squashes, then they have to go into the refrigerator. When you purchase them, whether you're getting them in a farm market or in your supermarket, you're going to want to scrub them before you use it with a brush under running water. There's often dirt on them because they grow on the ground. So use a nice brush to make sure you get them nice and clean before you eat them. Nutritionally, they have, depending on the variety, there's a little difference, but about 1 cup of a cubed squash has about 60 calories. And that's without adding anything. So once you've added the maple syrup that we're going to use today, or you add other ingredients, you do up the calories. But by itself, about 60 calories for a cubed cup of the winter squash. Very good sources of vitamin C, vitamin A, and potassium. Really high in that. That clue would be that bright orange color that you'll see inside with the flesh. It also gives you potassium, good source of fiber, and some magnesium. So it's a really nutritional powerhouse. So let's talk about our recipe today. I put the link, it's on our state webpage at the moment. You only need some dried cranberries, a medium squash, this, fits in the palm of my hand. It's a little bit smaller, I could go a bit bigger, but you can vary the amounts to suit your family and your needs. And a little bit of maple syrup, about 1/4 cup. So to start, we need to cut these. And these are really hard. They're also hard to cut. So a little tip is to take a sharp knife and carefully stab in about 1/2 inch to 1 inch, several spots around the squash. And I already did this. And then put it in the microwave oven for 1.5 to 2 minutes. And what that does is it'll start to steam the squash, and it'll soften it up a little bit to make cutting easier. And that's what I've done with this one, because it is really hard to cut. You want to pop off the stem if you can. Okay, so I just popped off the stem. Then you're going to use a really heavy, sharp knife or cleaver, and be very careful holding it on a cutting board, a stable surface. I like to make a little cut in the top to get my knife started, and then move my hand out of the way, and I'm cutting it in half. You might need to do this in a couple spots because the stem end is a little bit hard. It's the hardest part of the dish. If it's still too hard, you can pop it back in the microwave oven for a little bit to help make that easier. So what I have is my insides need to come out. These are the seeds. And there's some fibrous strings. You want to take those out. Now, like all of the seeds in the squash and pumpkin family, they are edible. So you can wash off all the stringy pieces of the pumpkin. I'm just going to hollow it out really nicely that way. Do the other one as well. And then you can roast them. They're edible. You can season them with a little, either sweet or savory seasoning. I washed these already. So what I'm going to do is coat them in just a little bit of oil, and then I'm going to sprinkle on my seasoning and put them in a hot oven. This happens to be a small cast iron skillet, so it'll do a really nice job, and then toast them, say 425 until they start to brown, and then they're delicious, sprinkled on salads or just as a snack. So I'm going to set these aside. Now for the squash, we're going to cut this into rings. You can use, it makes a really nice vessel for stuffing. Hard squashes, the flesh is very hard. It's best if you bake it or steam it or cube it. It can be cubed and put into soups. I often steam mine either in the oven or with some water underneath, and then tightly cover it, or I put, you can bake it. If you want to bake them whole, you can. What you want to do is poke, using a small knife, some holes around the outside of the top, and then bake them whole, and then it'll make it really easy to cut them. All right, so I'm going to hold this flat down on the surface like this, and I'm going to be cutting across here in about 1 inch thick half rings, if you will. I'm taking a little sliver off the end. So what I have are these nice pieces. Some of them are going to look like this, depending on where they are, and you have the flesh. So we're going to do that with the other half as well. Again, you could use butternut squash for this too. So when I'm making this, I like to pick one of these carnival kind of yellow orange striped pieces, and then also use the acorn squash because it looks really pretty in the dish. So then you're going to put them on a baking sheet. I use some parchment on my baking sheet. Sometimes the squash is going to caramelize a little bit, and you don't want it to stick. So I have it on my baking sheet, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush it with just a little bit of oil. I'm using a neutral oil like canola oil rather than the olive oil, since I'm going to be using maple syrup. I wanted a more neutral oil without any olivey taste. And just lightly brush both sides of the squash, flip them over. You don't have to turn the squash. When you're baking it, you can just leave it. Oven roasted squash is delicious. It freezes really well once it's been roasted. So it's another option for you. Okay, so that's done. Oops, one more piece. All right, so then I have my squashes ready to go. What you want to do ahead of time is I'm using dried cranberries. Now, some people might say, well, why don't you use fresh cranberries? Well, as you know, fresh cranberries are really tart, so you'd have to do something to them, like cook them in some water and add some sugar to really make them sweet. So the dried cranberries are already sweetened with sugar. So what you're going to do is, I like to plump them up a little bit. So take about half a cup of your cranberries and submerge them in boiling water for about 5 minutes. That'll plump up your cranberries. And you're going to use about a half a cup, and you're going to sprinkle them over the top so you have cranberries like that. Now you're ready to put this in the oven. You have two choices. You can just put it in the oven as it is, 375 for, about 30 minutes, give or take. Or if you like to steam it a little bit more, soften the cooking process and speed it up, cover it with foil, which is what I did with mine before, and it'll take, 20 minutes. I really just want them to be fork tender or knife tender, and then you'll take it out. So let's just take a look at what our finished product looks like. This is a great side dish for Thanksgiving, for any meal. You can make it ahead. So here we have our roasted squash, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in my dish for serving. So we're just gonna, you can rearrange the cranberries once they're in here. If I was going to make this ahead, I'd probably just undercook the squash just a little bit, and then I would refrigerate it. And then when it's time to make my meal, I would then put it in the oven and maybe cover it a little bit and finish the cooking process. And I would wait to drizzle on the maple syrup to that. So I have my dish. It's plated there. And what we're going to drizzle on is just a little bit of maple syrup. It adds a little sweetness. If I was going to freeze it, I would skip the maple syrup till serving time. You don't need a lot. And you have a really easy to go side dish packed with lots of nutrients. It's beautiful color. The rind is kind of tough, so you're not going to be eating that part, but it does make a really lovely presentation. So I hope you'll add this to your fall table with all the recipes that you're going to be using during the holidays. Perhaps you'll be tuning into our Wellness Wednesday at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Let's just give this a quick taste because it smells so good. Put a little bit in a bowl. A couple of cranberries. Delicious. Enjoy. Happy fall. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching. Bye.